From June 1st, 1970 to July 21st, 1971, two brothers were born in the great land of Scotland, Michael Sanderson and Marcus Owen. They were both born into a musical family, which is no stranger to why they started to play music at a very young age. When Mike and Marcus were around 10 to 11 years old, they started to make music by using the family's tape machine and cutting up samples of recorded adverts and children's programs that would come up on the television. They also began to create movies with Super 8 film and used their compositions as the soundtrack to that movie. In their teens, from 1984 to 1986 to be exact, Mike decided to be in some bands of his own with friends, using some of the equipment that their friends had, like analog synths, tape machines, and actual drums. This band would have to go through 14 members, but then, one day, Mike basically said to Marcus, "Hey, you want to be in my band?" Okay. And thus, a new band was formed that contained the brothers and Christopher Horn, a close friend of Mike. But there was a problem. They had no name yet, and it wasn't that hard to come up with one. You see, in 1979, they moved to Canada after their father had gotten a job as a construction worker to build a hockey stadium called the Saddledome. Around this time, Mike and Marcus watched hundreds of thousands of educational films, all produced by one company, the National Film Board of Canada. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, it's because they put an S in front. But wait, they had another problem. Where were they going to record? Well, due to the good salary that the brothers had working at their part-time jobs, they got a bunch of instruments and decided to record in the brothers' garage, making up their own music label, Music 70. In 1987, they would record and privately release their first ever demo album, Catalog 3, on cassette. We don't know about this album a whole lot, but the old Boards of Canada website says that it has 8 tracks, which almost lasts an hour, and it hasn't been heard outside of the band's friends and family. 2 years later, their next release, Acid Memories, would be privately released on cassette as well. This release had 6 tracks and used to not be heard outside friends and family, but however, a 25-second leak of the first track, Duffy, would come 10 years later on the EHX website. Here's the leak. Although it was looking good for the band, they would go on hiatus for a bit after all the members had to go to college. After the brothers graduated in 1992, they got back together and made new music. Their next release, Closest Volume 1, would come out later that year. This album has 17 tracks, and most of the names of those tracks revolve mostly around mathematics. Stuff like 5D, Focus on the Spiral, Tends Towards, Numerator, and Trillions are great examples of this. Also, I don't know why, but the album cover for this release creeps me the fuck out. It gives me the vibe of those lost found footage films and analog horror almost, and that's probably why I am scared of this uncanny face. 2 years later, their next release, Play by Numbers, would release. This album only contains 5 tracks, and this is another one that has a leak of audio from the EHX website, which comes from the second track, Wouldn't You Like to Be Free? Even though that this barely has any audio released, people say that this release has a very My Bloody Valentine influence to it. Another release would come out that year, which was Hooper Bay. The title, Hooper Bay, is actually an Alaskan village and is also the westernmost village in Alaska. This release also has 5 tracks and also has another leak of audio from the third track, Circle. As I mentioned earlier, all of these releases are demo tapes and mostly just for fun. But then, things got serious. The brothers felt like that they didn't want to make music solely for fun anymore, but to actually gain some attention and hope to be a part of music history. So, in 1995, they worked and released their first actual piece of work, an EP called Twoism. This EP was released on cassette, just like the other releases, but it was also pressed on vinyl to be shared with family, friends, and record companies, hoping that they could get a record deal. As the band was waiting on a response from the record companies, Chris decided to make a decision that would change the band forever. Yo, I think I'm gonna leave the band. What? Why? Personal reasons? Okay. Yeah, so Chris decided to leave the band, unfortunately. In the future, Chris would actually be a solo electronic artist who goes by the name Christ. He actually gained a bit of attention as he toured a lot and even performed a Peel session on the BBC radio. But for now, we shall move on from Chris and let's take a deep dive into the EP. Starting off with the album cover art. The cover art is a frame from a 1980s sci-fi film called The Killings at Outpost Zeta. There's not any other references or samples that are used in this album, but just only the cover art. Now let's actually get into the EP itself. The EP starts off with 69er, which is arguably one of Boards of Canada's best tracks to date. It is literal perfection, and I don't need to explain why. Now, why is it called 69er, you may ask? Well, we actually don't know. You'll follow a later lesson that these guys rarely ever give interviews and talk about most of their songs. So, we're gonna have to go with theories. And the most common theory is that it has to do with the sample that is used in the song. And where does that sample come from? Oh, you know, just an X-rated film called Summer of '72. Ah, you see? Now you get it. And if you don't know, the code for is 69. So, there you go. You'll see that the number 69 will come back in later videos as well. Anyways, here's the sample that they used.
That tiny room at the beach was absolutely the perfect place for my first time. When we came together, I could feel the hairs growing on my chest. I saw my future. I saw my past. For a few minutes, it was like being alive. They lived happily ever after. All my questions have been answered. All my fears disappeared.
You'll also see that Summer of '72 will come back in later videos as well. But anyways, on to the next track. Oirectine has similar vibes to 69er a bit, but it's more trip-hoppy than that, to be honest. The title of the track was also often believed as a typo for the word directine, but this has been proven false. And that's really it. That's all there is to this track. Let's go on to the next one. Iced cooly kind of sounds like the feeling that you get when you drink an ice cold drink in the middle of the night. It's very pleasing to hear. The name iced cooly comes from the French word cooly, which is another word for a deep ravine, which mostly appears in the area of Alberta, Canada, which is also where the brothers grew up as well. So the name iced cooly is basically a coulee next to a wall of ice. That's it. Anyways, on to the next track. Now, if you take a listen to Basefree for the first time, you might be thinking in your head, just like me, that this sounds so off-putting, and I think that there is a reason why. Because the name Basefree is an inversion of the word freebase, which literally means taking crack cocaine. So this song is basically on crack. Now, the track runs for 6 minutes and 31 seconds, but the actual runtime of the song is 5 minutes and 55 seconds, because there's actually a hidden track in this song. This This cute little hidden track that goes on for 19 seconds is believed to be called It's Too Orangey. The title is believed to be a reference to a slogan from a British soft drink commercial from the 80s.
Aura! That's too orangey for crows.
This track also appears in later songs as well, but we'll get to that later. On to the next track. Now, everybody can agree with me on this, but the title track is a fucking banger. Might be the best off this EP, along with sixtyniner and oirectine. Now, there's actually a really interesting theory that the word twoism is actually a play on of the word taoism, which is mostly a religion in China, which believes in spiritual immortality, which means that the spirit of the body joins the universe after you die. Also, you might have seen this symbol, which is referred to as the yin and yang symbol, which is the depiction of spiritual immortality. The track runs at 6 minutes and 15 seconds. But guess what? The actual track runs at 5 minutes and 35 seconds. Because guess what? There's another hidden track. This hidden track, which runs at 30 seconds, is believed to be called Blueberry, which appears in a later song as well, but we'll get to that later. Anyways, on to the next track. Seeya Later doesn't actually have that much information that we can discuss, but I can give you my opinion on it. It's a pretty cool track, I guess. I like the synths. You know what? Let's just go to the last track. Melissa Juice is a cute little jingle that is actually one of my favorites off this EP. Now, the title is pretty weird when you think about it. Like, what the fuck is Melissa Juice? Well, there's a theory that Melissa Juice is a reference to a Lysajuice curve, which has to do with everybody's favorite subject in the world, math, aka hell. A Lysajuice curve is a graph of a system of parametric equations, and parametric equations define x and y as functions of a third parameter, aka time. I got that from fucking Khan Academy, okay? I have no idea what I just said. It could also refer to Melissa officinalis, aka Lemon Balm, but we don't know. We will probably never know what the title of this track means. Now, you're probably wondering why I am skipping the last track off this EP. Well, it's because that song appears on an album that we will get to later on in this series, so stay tuned. So anyways, that is the conclusion of the deep dive into twoism. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll see the next part of this series where we will talk about the other demo tapes. So see you guys later. Bye-bye.